She bought John Gotti's abandoned mansion for pennies. She thought she was starting a new life with her twins, but when they found a hidden room beneath the house, the real nightmare began. Subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Leah Harris had grown used to waking before dawn, long before her body felt ready to move, and long before the alarm clock on the battered nightstand buzzed its grating reminder of another day she wasn't prepared to face. Her internal clock knew the rhythm too well. Rise quietly so the kids could sleep a little longer, stretch the aching muscles that never fully relaxed anymore, splash water on her face in the dim bathroom with the flickering light bulb, and convince herself she had enough energy to survive one more day. But lately, even that fragile ritual felt like a lie. Her one-bedroom apartment in the heart of Brooklyn was cramped enough that when she opened her eyes, she could see the cracked plaster of the ceiling, the peeling paint around the window frame, the sagging pull-out bed where her twins slept just 6 feet away. The entire place smelled faintly of mold and the artificial lemon scent from dollar store cleaning spray. Even in winter, the air held a sticky heaviness from the constant leaks and bad insulation. Leah's landlord didn't care about fixing anything unless it threatened the building's structural integrity. And even then, he'd complain the entire way through. Poverty had a sound, a smell, a texture. Leah knew every layer of it intimately. She sat on the edge of her mattress for a moment, staring down at her blistered heels and the socks she should have replaced 3 months ago. Money didn't stretch the way hope did. Hope could be stretched until it was paper thin. Money snapped in half the second the rent bill appeared, and today that bill wasn't just appearing. It was looming like a guillotine. A hollow knock from the hallway made her flinch. She stood, smoothed down her thrift store uniform shirt, and opened the door just a crack. A white envelope with their address scrawled in blocky letters sat on the floor. Her heart dropped even before she picked it up. The handwriting belonged to the landlord, Mr. Robinson, though Leah doubted the man had a heart that justified the Mr. in his title. She peeled the envelope open with trembling fingers. Final notice: pay total balance or vacate within 30 days. 30 days. A countdown she had no way to stop. She looked over at her twins. Aya and Jace lay tangled in a mess of covers, their breathing soft and innocent, oblivious to the storm sharpening just outside their fragile bubble of childhood. They were 12, too young to work, too old not to understand tension when it crackled through their tiny home. Leah had spent years pretending everything was fine, smiling through hunger pains, dancing around words like disconnection and eviction as if they couldn't touch them. But now those words sat on her tongue like stones. She didn't cry. She couldn't afford to. Tears took time, and time was the one luxury she could never access. She moved quietly through the kitchen, stepping over a creaky floorboard she had memorized the position of precisely to avoid waking the twins. There was no pantry, just a cabinet with 3 mismatched bowls and a half-empty box of cereal. She opened the fridge, which hummed like a dying animal. A carton of milk sat inside, expiration date 4 days past. She sniffed it, made a face, and set it back. No breakfast today, not until payday. By the time she slipped her feet into her worn sneakers, Aya was awake, watching her with those wide, alert eyes that always seemed to catch the truth before Leah could package it into something manageable. The girl's curls framed her face like a crown she didn't yet realize she deserved. Jace stirred next, stretching long limbs that were growing faster than his clothes could keep up. He blinked at Leah, still half in dreams. "You going early again?" he murmured. Leah forced a smile that reached only one corner of her mouth. "You two get some rest. There's cereal if you need it. I'll be home before you know it." Aya sat up. "Is everything okay?" "Of course," Leah lied smoothly. She had become fluent in that language. "Don't worry, baby girl, just the usual." But Aya didn't look convinced. Children like her, children who grew up counting grocery receipts instead of stars, learned to sense disaster the way sailors sensed storms. The hallway reeked of stale cigarettes and boiled cabbage as Leah hurried toward the bus stop. Her breath showed in the cold January air like smoke from a fire she couldn't control. The city was loud already. Buses screeching, delivery trucks rumbling, people cursing their mornings. But beneath the noise pulsed another hum. Panic. It crawled under her skin, reminding her that each footstep brought her closer to losing everything she had left. Her first job of the day was at a private hospital in Midtown, where she scrubbed floors white enough for the wealthy to look down on. Leah cleaned up after people who didn't know struggle existed. Wealthy executives sighed in annoyance if they waited more than 5 minutes for a latte, while she counted every dollar like it was its own fragile universe. They didn't see her. She was invisible unless something was out of place. Her second job didn't pay much more respect. Theater shifts in the evenings, collecting coats from silk-gloved hands that held jewels worth more than a year of Leah's combined wages. By the time she returned home each night, she had walked so many miles her bones felt fused together. Today, she added a third meeting to her list, the courthouse. Mr. Robinson had filed an eviction order as fast as he could lick a stamp. Courtrooms never intimidated Leah, not because she felt safe there, but because she already lived her life on trial. Every decision scrutinized, every dollar judged. The judge glanced over paperwork with the efficiency of someone who stopped seeing people years ago. Robinson's lawyer spoke in smooth, bored sentences. Repeated late payments. Tenants unable to keep up with cost increases. Client wishes to reclaim the property for renovation. Leah tried to explain that she was working, that she was doing everything she could, that she had children, that they'd be homeless. The judge nodded in monotone sympathy and ruled in the landlord's favor without a heartbeat of hesitation. 30 days to leave. The gavel came down like a coffin lid sealing shut. Afterward, Leah found herself walking the long way home, numbly letting the wind push her from block to block. Desperation tasted metallic on her tongue. She didn't have family to turn to. Friends had their own battles. Shelters were full. Every path she imagined led to the same dead end. Later that night, when the kids were asleep and the apartment had gone dark except for the cracked phone screen lighting her face, she started searching. Room rentals, garbage shoebox apartments for the same price she already couldn't afford, ads that smelled like scams. Every click was a reminder. Nothing would save them. Then she saw it. It was buried between overpriced listings. A glitch in the system. A gigantic mansion with sweeping columns and sprawling grounds that looked like something from a movie about royalty, rather than a listing site. The price was so low she thought it was a typo. The photos showed a long driveway lined with trees, a stone fountain out front, balconies, massive windows. The description was startlingly brief. Estate property. As is condition. Fast sale preferred. And one line at the bottom. Formerly owned by John Gotti. She blinked. The John Gotti? The infamous Teflon Don who ruled the Gambino family? The man the entire city whispered about for decades? The house looked like time itself had abandoned it after he died. The walls were cracked, the paint was faded, weeds choked the once perfect landscaping. Still, even in its decay, it looked like a dream. Why would the price be so low? Why would they want to sell so quickly? She didn't know. She didn't care. It was a chance. One chance. Her last chance. The real estate agent who answered her call sounded startled that she wasn't another gossip-seeking fan of Mafia history. When he learned she was actually interested in buying, he insisted on meeting her in person. His eyes had darted around nervously as they drove through the iron gates the next morning. The estate loomed ahead like a giant fallen asleep, waiting to wake in rage. He talked too much. About heirs who wanted to wash their hands of the place. About rumors. About the last prospective buyers fleeing before closing. About noises, haunting, unwelcome visitors. People believe the house still belongs to the people who used to run it, he said in a low voice, and they don't like strangers stepping on their turf. Even dead men have loyalists. But Leah wasn't afraid of ghosts. Reality was far scarier. She signed the papers in a blur. She signed because the kids needed their own rooms. Because Hope needed a place to live. Because she was tired of being pushed around by life and wanted to push back. So now, here she was, standing at the threshold of a mansion that once hosted some of the most dangerous men in America. Weathered stone beneath her hand. A front door that looked like it could withstand a battering ram. A wind whistling through the overgrown hedges as though trying to warn her away. She inhaled sharply, gripping the oversized key the agent had pressed into her palm earlier. A new beginning, she whispered. The twins stood on either side of her, their eyes wide with awe. Jace already dreaming up ways to install gadgets and hidden speakers. Aya holding herself more cautiously, her gaze scanning every shadow for untold stories. Leah slid the key into the massive lock. It turned with a grinding groan. The door creaked open to reveal a cavernous foyer lined with dusty chandeliers and a staircase that spiraled like a spine of bone into the darkness above. They stepped inside. The moment their feet crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind them with a violent force that shook the walls, echoing through the emptiness like thunder trapped in stone. Leah spun around, heart hammering. No wind, no draft, no one there. Just a hollow silence swallowing the last of daylight from the outside world. And then, faintly, from somewhere deeper in the house, a metallic clink like a chain being pulled. Aya grabbed Leah's sleeve. "Mom," she whispered, "we shouldn't be here." Leah swallowed, forcing her breathing to steady, even as the fine hairs on her arms prickled. "We've got nowhere else to go," she murmured, "so we're staying." But, as that sharp, cold sound echoed again, Leah realized something she hadn't allowed herself to admit. They weren't alone in this house. Not now. Maybe not ever. And behind the silence of the mansion, something waited, watching, listening, deciding what to do with its new residents. The dream of salvation had just become something else entirely, something dangerous, something alive. She took a step forward into the shadows. The house welcomed her with another soft clink of metal, like the beginning of a warning, or a promise. The silence that followed the echo of that metallic clink felt too deliberate to be an accident. Leah forced her shoulders back and drew a slow breath, willing herself not to show fear in front of the twins. Aya remained close to her side, eyes narrowed like a cat that sensed a predator. Jace, already trying to be the brave man he wished he was, stepped forward first into the grand foyer, his sneakers sinking slightly into the thick, dust-layered carpet. Dust motes swirled through the fading light coming from the tall windows, disturbed by their arrival as if the air itself woke from a long slumber. The mansion was breathtaking in its ruined grandeur. The foyer rose up into a domed ceiling from which hung a chandelier that must once have dazzled guests with brilliance. Now its crystals were dulled with grime, some broken, some missing entirely, and the chains holding it creaked faintly as though they remembered too much weight over too many years. Cobwebs clung to the ornate banister of the sweeping staircase that rose to the second floor, and faded photographs in gold frames still hung on the walls as if frozen in time. The faces in the photos stared back at them, men in suits and heavy rings, women in expensive gowns, their smiles full of secrets. "Whoa," Jace breathed, already entranced. "This place is like a haunted castle." Aya shot him a look that suggested she wasn't fond of that description. The house smelled of dust, old paper, stale cigars, and something else. Something metallic and faintly sour, like rust or forgotten grief. Leah tightened her grip on the strap of her handbag. Her heart still pounded from the door slamming behind them, but she pushed forward. This was home now. Or it would be, once she made it livable. She flicked the switch on the wall. To her surprise, the lights overhead flickered to life one by one, humming through the house like distant electricity awakening. There was a brief delay between each bulb, as if the house needed a moment to decide whether to cooperate. When the final chandelier bulb glowed dimly, the place looked almost warm, almost welcoming. "It's not so scary with the lights on," Leah said, though the crack in her voice did her no favors. They explored the first floor together, wandering through one grand room after another. There was a living room with velvet couches torn at the seams, a dining hall large enough to host 50 people comfortably, the long table draped in a dusty cloth like a shroud. A study lined with bookshelves holding volumes on politics, history, and crime, titles related to the life of a man who once believed himself invincible. Leah ran her fingers along the spines, imagining how many whispered deals had been struck in this room. "Do you think he really lived here?" Jace asked, voice dipped in awe. Leah nodded, though she still struggled to reconcile the idea of the infamous John Gotti sitting at that desk signing papers while lieutenants stood guard outside the windows. In another room, a bar decorated in deep mahogany and red leather, glasses still sat arranged on shelves behind the counter. One glass had a faint lipstick stain. It was as though everyone had left in a hurry, intending to return, but they never did. Aya rubbed her arms as if cold. "Feels like they're still here," she muttered softly. Leah turned to reassure her when a sudden creak echoed through the ceiling above them. They all froze, eyes drawn upward. The old house groaned again, and a shower of dust trickled down from a ceiling crack. "It's a house this size," Leah said quickly. "Wood expands, wind shifts things. It's normal." But she didn't fully believe her own words. They settled in a smaller room off the back of the house, a former servant's sitting room, which Leah decided could serve as a temporary living space until the bedrooms upstairs were cleaned. There was a couch, worn but usable, and a fireplace they dared not light yet. She laid out blankets she had brought from the apartment and ordered the twins to stick together. By the time the sun slipped away and night deepened its claim on the sky, the mansion began to change. Shadows lengthened in the hallways. The gentle hum of electricity tapered off to a spooky quiet. Every sound amplified: the drip of a leaky pipe, the creak of floorboards, the whisper of wind against window glass. The children fell asleep quicker than she expected, exhausted by excitement and fear. Leah sat awake with a flashlight on the armrest, scrolling through her phone for information about the house. She found articles about Gotti's reign, police raids, and rumors of hidden rooms packed with cash and evidence. She found conspiracy theories about the house being cursed, about spirits of murdered enemies haunting the halls. She shook her head and set the phone down. Rumors didn't scare her. Real people scared her. Bills scared her. Failure scared her. Hours later, sometime past midnight, she dozed off, and then the house woke her again. A soft tapping, then a shuffle, then a voice. She jolted upright, every nerve alert. Aya sat next to her, eyes wide like black moons in the dark. "Mom," she whispered, "someone's walking upstairs." Leah held her breath. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, and accompanied by the faintest mumbling. A man's voice. Not loud, but unmistakable. She strained her ears. The words were unclear, as though spoken from behind a wall or through water, but the cadence was steady, almost prayer-like. Jace sat up groggily, rubbing his eyes. Leah motioned for silence. The voice echoed again, closer this time. A chill raced down her spine. "It's probably the house settling," Leah whispered, but Aya shook her head sharply. "He's speaking another language," she said. "I heard him say famiglia. That's Italian. It means family." Leah's blood ran cold. She couldn't remember the last time anything terrified her that wasn't a letter from a landlord. She switched on her flashlight, pointing the beam toward the hallway. There was nothing there but darkness yawning like an open mouth. The voice stopped. The footsteps stopped. Silence rushed back with full force. Jace, still half asleep, blinked up at her. "What if the house is haunted?" he asked. Leah pressed her lips together. She wanted to say no. She wanted to dismiss it entirely. But this place, it had energy, like the walls had been listening, absorbing, and now whispering secrets back. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "tomorrow we'll see the whole house in daylight. It'll feel different." She hoped that was true. She needed it to be true. Morning came with a pale gray light filtering through heavy drapes. Leah tried to shake off the night's dread as she brewed instant coffee on a portable stove she'd brought. The kids ate cereal dry out of plastic bowls. Jace chattered about exploring like an adventurer uncovering treasure, while Aya remained reserved, her eyes darting to every corner as if expecting something to leap out. Once they finished, Leah marched them toward the second floor. She flipped the hallway light switch. The bulbs buzzed but didn't come on this time. The house seemed unwilling to reveal everything at once. The upstairs hall was lined with closed doors. Leah opened the first, a bedroom with a four-poster bed shrouded in sheets like a sleeping beast under covers. The next door revealed a dressing room full of abandoned clothes, suits, and dresses wrapped in plastic, shoes gathering years of dust. Then they reached a locked door. The knob rattled but held firm. Behind them, something clicked. All three turned. One of the framed photographs on the wall had tilted as though touched by an invisible hand. The image showed Gotti standing beside another man, both holding glasses of whiskey, both staring directly into the camera. But now, though it made no logical sense, it looked like their eyes had shifted, as if they were looking at Leah. "Enough of this," Leah muttered, more to herself than the kids. "It's nothing." She led them back to the first floor, to the study. She wanted a moment to breathe, to gather composure. But the universe had something else in mind. Jace noticed a detail she hadn't. A single tile in the study's floor was slightly raised compared to the others. It reflected the afternoon light just enough to catch his eye. "What's that?" he asked, kneeling. Before Leah could respond, he pressed down on the tile. A sharp mechanical click echoed through the room, followed by a low rumble under their feet. The floor near the bookshelf began to slide away, revealing a dark square hole and a set of stairs dropping beneath the house. A hidden passage. A secret waiting decades for new hands to uncover it. Leah's heart thundered. She didn't want another mystery. She wanted peace, safety. But something inside her, some mix of desperation and curiosity, pulled her forward. "Stay close," she whispered, gripping both twins' hands. Together, they descended into the shadows. The air grew colder the deeper they went. The walls changed from drywall to cold concrete. Pipes lined the ceiling. A single flickering bulb lit a cramped basement that seemed untouched for years. Then they turned a corner, and the space opened into a hidden room. A bunker. A command post disguised beneath opulence. There was a table covered with folders and microcassette tapes labeled in jagged handwriting. Cabinets filled with old newspapers and maps. A metal locker sealed with a rusted padlock. And against the far wall stood a massive steel vault door, thick enough to withstand bullets or worse. The air smelled of dust and secrets. "Mom," Jace whispered, "this is like a mob movie." "No," Leah said softly, staring in awe. "This is real." She knew then, without needing words, that this room had once controlled the fate of men and cities. That decisions made here had rippled through streets soaked in fear. That John Gotti himself had likely stood exactly where she stood now, breathing this same heavy air. Aya reached out and picked up a cassette. On the label, traitors. Another, FBI rats. Another, burials. "These shouldn't be here," Leah whispered. "These shouldn't exist." She was a mother who had spent years fighting just to feed her kids. Now she stood above a treasure trove of criminal evidence that could rewrite history, or destroy her if the wrong people found out she had ever seen it. As she stared at the vault door, imagining what could be hidden inside, the lights above them suddenly flickered and died. Darkness swallowed the room whole. The door at the top of the stairs creaked open. Then came the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Leah's hand shot out blindly, grabbing both children tight. Someone else was in the house. Not a whisper. Not a ghost. A real person. And they were coming closer. The silence in the dark was so complete it felt like a physical force pressing against them, squeezing breath into something shallow and fragile. Leah's heart hammered in her ears, making it difficult to hear anything but the thundering panic inside her body. Yet, beneath that rhythm, faint but unmistakable, footsteps moved slowly through the house above them. The boards creaked, groaned, and complained under a weight that did not belong to her or the children. Whoever was up there was taking their time, listening, searching. Jace tightened his grip around Leah's arm, his fingers trembling. Aya's other hand clung to her mother's sleeve with equal desperation, though her face, barely visible in the darkness, remained tense and alert. Neither child made a sound, and their fear felt fused with Leah's, braided into a single protective terror. She forced herself not to scream or run. Panic would get them caught. Instead, she swallowed hard and whispered so gently that the words barely formed. "Don't move." Her voice felt like the soft crackle of paper on fire, delicate and dangerous. The footsteps paused directly above them. A low groan from the pipes overhead trembled through the ceiling, making the bulb that had died moments earlier sway like a condemned pendulum. Then, without warning, the footsteps resumed, heading away, toward the front of the house. Slowly, methodically, as if the intruder expected the walls themselves to speak. Leah willed her shaking hands to find the flashlight she'd brought down, but her fingers brushed nothing but cold concrete. The light was still upstairs. They were blind. Her breathing strained to remain quiet. Every instinct screamed to run up the stairs and escape, but she forced her mind to work. Whoever that was knew something. They hadn't broken in through glass or forced doors. The lights upstairs hadn't flickered when the steps began. They were already inside, possibly before the family even arrived. The house wasn't just holding history, it was holding people. When the footsteps finally faded into the distance and the silence resumed, Leah let out one shaky exhale. "Okay," she whispered, swallowing. "We stay quiet, we stay smart, and we get back up there only when we're sure it's safe." Jace's voice came out so thin it dissolved into the air. "Mom, what if there's still—" "I know," Leah said. "I know." The children weren't crying, but fear sat heavy on their small shoulders. She needed to get them out of the basement. But when she turned, her shoulder grazed something hard, metal. She felt along the wall until her hand found a switch. With a tentative push, a set of dim yellow emergency lights snapped on overhead, revealing the bunker once more. It wasn't just a hidden room. It was an entire underground suite designed to survive siege or apocalypse. There was a desk bolted into the floor, a typewriter, shelves filled with labeled files, newspapers stacked neatly as if waiting for a reader who would never return. The steel vault door at the far end loomed like the entrance to a tomb. On the desk, a thick ledger lay open, pages filled with transactions and names, handwritten in neat rows. Beside it, a cigarette burned down to ash in a crystal tray, frozen at the exact moment it was abandoned. Aya took a hesitant step forward, her curiosity battling fear. She picked up one of the cassettes from the table, its label written in angry strokes of permanent marker. Traitors. Jace hovered behind her, staring at boxes stuffed with money bands still wrapped around old cash from decades gone by. "This is like history," he murmured, voice thick with wonder. "Real history." "It's dangerous," Leah corrected, her eyes locked on the vault. "It's the kind of history men died for, the kind of history that could still kill us." Something about the vault called to her, a presence, a hunger. She approached slowly, pressing her palm against the cold steel. It wasn't a normal safe. It was a command center, a panic room, a hiding place for things worth more than power. Secrets. She spotted a small keypad on the right side, the numbers worn from years of use. A family code, a date, a name. If she knew, she could open it. But that would mean digging deeper into a world she already wished she'd never brushed against. A sudden scraping noise from above made her snap her head toward the stairs. Someone moved again, this time closer. The children froze. Leah motioned for silence, and the three of them backed farther from the open entrance. She spotted a rusted metal rod leaning against the wall. A piece of shelving, maybe, just heavy enough to serve as a weapon. She grabbed it, holding it tightly though her hands were slick with sweat. Then, from the vault, a quiet beep. Leah jerked her head toward it in confusion. A keypad light flickered. The LED display flashed awake as though triggered by motion, and a low hum filled the air. Something inside the vault had power. Something inside was waiting. She took a step closer and almost tripped over an older camcorder set on a chair. It was plugged into an outlet near the wall, though the cord was dusty with age. The device looked like it hadn't been touched since the late 90s. Leah examined the tape inside, its label faded but still legible. The truth. Her blood chilled. There were truths down here no one had been meant to uncover. Jace knelt by a vintage VCR hooked up to a dusty monitor mounted in a corner. "I can try to play some of these," he whispered, fingers already moving over the controls with the ease of a tech prodigy who fixed electronics others tossed away. If we see what's on them, maybe we'll understand what's happening here. With someone still upstairs? Leah hissed. No. But the idea gnawed at her. Answers lay in those tapes. Answers about who might be in the house right now, and why. Aya pointed at the vault again, stepping closer despite fear turning her voice small. What if there's something inside that explains why the house was so cheap? Something that tells us what we're up against? Leah didn't want to know. She didn't want anything to do with this side of the house's history. She wanted safety, a future, a way out. But she and her children were already buried too deeply to retreat without knowledge. She turned to Jace reluctantly. One tape, then we leave. First noise from upstairs and we shut it off. He nodded and whispered, "Okay." He grabbed a cassette labeled FBI Rats and slid it into the player. The screen crackled, warping before a grainy video appeared. A man's face, hard, worn, with dark circles beneath eyes that had seen too much, filled the monitor. Behind him, a brick wall. The frame shook slightly, as if this was filmed in a hurry or secretly. The man spoke in a thick accent, Italian-American, rough and rasped by cigarettes. "They think they're smarter than us," he muttered, glaring. "They think we don't know what they do in the shadows, the deals they make, the betrayals. But we know. The Dawn knows." Leah's breath caught. The man leaned closer, eyes boring into the camera. "There are rats in the Bureau, people working both sides, and when the time comes, we'll show them exactly what we got on them. Every dirty secret they got, every murder they covered up, every dollar they took." The tape glitched, then cut abruptly to a document table with folders stamped with the seal of the FBI. A finger jabbed at each one as the same voice narrated names. Names of agents, government officials, district attorneys, people who still held power today, people who would kill to erase the proof. "Oh my God," Leah whispered. Another set of footsteps thundered above them, heavy, urgent, more than one pair this time. Jace hit stop so fast the screen went black with a pop. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown. "We need to go," Leah whispered. "Now." But the moment she turned toward the stairs, the basement lights flickered once more and remained out. Absolute dark swallowed everything. A soft click, the unmistakable sound of the door at the top of the stairs being pulled shut. Aya gasped, tiny and sharp. They weren't alone, and whoever had come wasn't leaving. Leah clutched the metal rod in her hand so tightly that her knuckles throbbed. The air seemed to thicken, as though the house itself held its breath with them. Then the footsteps moved again, headed directly toward the basement door. Each one loud, controlled, confident. She had no doubt now. Someone was hunting them. The house had not given them secrets without a price, and the people who wanted those secrets buried had just made their move. The doorknob rattled. Leah shielded her children with her body, inhaled once through clenched teeth, and prayed this was not how their story ended. The basement door shuddered under a hard pull from the other side, and Leah instinctively wrapped both arms around her children, forcing them behind her as though she could shield them from bullets with her body. She held the metal rod out in front like a sword, though her hands trembled so violently she feared she might drop it before anything even happened. Her breath locked in her chest. There was no running now. The house had become a trap, walls closing in with memory and threat. The doorknob twisted once more, then stopped. Silence hung, heavy as suffocating smoke. Whoever was on the other side seemed to listen. Every nerve in Leah's body screamed. Jace's fingers dug into the back of her shirt. Aya pressed her face into her mother's hip, trying to disappear into the fabric. Then, suddenly, the footsteps retreated, slow at first, then quicker, fading into the house above. Leah didn't move until the air stopped vibrating. Even then, she waited longer, counting her pulse beats, terrified the intruder might be lingering, just waiting for them to reveal themselves. When she finally trusted her knees to hold her, she exhaled shakily. "We can't stay. We move now." They crept up the stairs, each step groaning beneath their weight. Leah reached for the handle and pressed her ear to the cold metal. Silence. Her fingers hovered. What if the intruder stood right on the other side? What if this door opened to barrel of a gun? But there was no other exit. They had to take the risk. Leah threw the door wide. The hallway upstairs was empty. The lights flickered dully, half-powered by the ancient wiring. The air was warm and thick, as though someone had left in a hurry but hadn't taken their breath with them. The front door was still shut. No obvious signs of forced entry. But somewhere inside these walls, danger pulsed like electricity. They moved room to room, searching for proof of the intruder, a knocked-over vase, a misplaced shadow, a cracked floorboard. Nothing. It made the fear worse. A ghost would have left more evidence. Leah ushered the children to the garage, the car now a symbol of sanity in the outside world. But when she pressed the key fob, no familiar beep met her ears. She tried again. Nothing. A chill swept through her bones. She tugged on the driver's door, locked. The manual key turned stiffly in the lock, and she yanked harder. The door opened. She climbed inside, heart pounding. The dashboard was dark. The car refused to start. Not even a click. The battery cables had been cleanly severed. Leah stared, disbelief turning to terror. Someone had done this while they were downstairs, prepared for their escape, wanted them trapped. Aya wiped tears from her cheeks with the back of her sleeve. "Mom, what do we do?" she whispered. Leah closed her eyes, steadying herself. "We go back inside. We wait in the safest room we can find, and we call for help." But when she pulled up her phone, the bars of reception were gone. No service. 10 minutes ago they had felt alone. Now they felt hunted. She guided the kids to the study, the one with the thick oak door and the heavy lock. It was the closest thing to shelter the house offered. Once inside, she turned the lock with a soft click. Jace closed the curtains. Aya pulled a lamp closer to her mother, pressing her small hand into Leah's palm as if offering strength. Leah sat at the desk, breathing unevenly. "What if that person comes back?" Jace whispered. "He won't," Leah answered. She had no proof for the certainty in her voice, but she knew the children needed steel, not honesty. A faint draft brushed her ankle. She looked down. Something small and rectangular peeked from underneath the desk. She reached for it and found a faded photograph. 3 figures, a younger woman standing with John Gotti, his arm around her shoulders, and a baby in her arms. Her mother. Her chest tightened until she couldn't breathe. She flipped the photo, reading the handwriting on the back. Monica Lawson, John Gotti, and baby Leah, 1992. The air thickened. Her mind raced. Her mother? Her mother knew Gotti, had lived alongside him, smiled with him, trusted him enough to let him hold her daughter. Leah felt the ground shift beneath her feet. All these years she'd begged for answers to her mother's silence, her anxiety, the shadows in her past. And now, decades later, a single photograph whispered the truth. Her mother was part of Gotti's world, not merely adjacent, in it. Jace leaned over her shoulder. "Mom, that's you." His voice cracked. "Does that mean we're related to them?" to him? Leah swallowed hard. Her mother, Monica, had always refused to speak of family. Leah never knew anything about her father, just that he wasn't around, that he never would be. Was that because mentioning his name could get them all killed? The weight of generational secrets slammed into her like a blow. "I don't know what it means," she finally said, voice trembling, "but it means something." Before she could process more, a low rumble vibrated through the floor. A car had pulled onto the long driveway. Then another. Headlights flashed against the curtains. Engines idled. "Are those the police?" Aya asked. Leah listened. No sirens, no radios, just men emerging from vehicles. Heavy doors shutting, voices, too muted to decipher, but stern, purposeful. She peeked through the edge of the curtain. Black SUVs lined the path. Men in dark coats, armed, organized, not police, government. Her blood iced. Whoever had been in the basement wasn't just some squatter or burglar. They were scouting, confirming, reporting. They knew what she found, and now they were here to erase every trace of it. Leah backed away from the window, her heart slamming so violently that vision blurred. Her gaze fell to the phone on the desk. Useless. And the spring air outside echoed with the crunch of boots as people rushed up the porch steps. The doorbell rang once, sharp and commanding. "Mrs. Lawson," a voice called through the door, amplifying into every corner of the mansion. It wasn't shouted, but the tone held authority that expected obedience. "We need to speak with you, immediately." Leah forced herself to answer, though every instinct pleaded for silence. "Who are you?" she called back, fighting to make her voice steady. A pause. "Federal agents. We have reason to believe you're in possession of dangerous criminal evidence. We're here to help you." Help. The word tasted like poison. She looked at her children. Their fear, their trust, their dependence on her. She could hand over the tapes, the files. The vault would become their problem. And maybe her children would be safe. Maybe life would go back to something like normal. But a memory flickered. The threats on those tapes, the corruption, the power these men guarded. If she gave it all away, she was not saving her children. She was sentencing them to a life under silent danger. The doorknob of the front door rattled, a shoulder shoved against the wood. They weren't waiting for consent. They were coming in. "Mom," Jace whispered brokenly, "what do we do?" The truth pressed against Leah from all sides. Her mother's connection, the Mafia's secrets, the vault below, the federal wolves at her door. She had inherited more than a house. She had inherited a war. "We run," she murmured. She unlocked the study door just as splintering wood echoed from the foyer. They sprinted down the back hallway, heading toward the kitchen and the door that led to the yard. If they could reach the woods, there might be a way out. A fence, a back road, anything. But before they reached the door, a man stepped into the doorway. Dark hair, black tactical gear, a weapon drawn. He didn't shout. He didn't hesitate. "Don't move," he ordered. For a moment, the entire world froze around Leah, terror rippling into every corner of her body. The edge of a choice cut at her throat. Fight and likely die, or surrender and live under someone else's lie forever. Jace gripped her hand. Aya leaned into her side, whimpering quietly. "Please," Leah whispered, voice cracking. "My kids." The man's jaw tightened. His eyes flickered, not with sympathy, but with calculation. Then a window shattered upstairs. A loud curse, more chaos. The agent's gaze snapped upward for half a second. Half a second was enough. Leah hurled the metal rod, the clang startling him off balance as she shoved the children toward the door. "Run!" They sprinted into the cold air, the porch lights flaring behind them as dark figures spilled out like predators freed from a cage. Bullets didn't fly, too much risk of evidence. They wanted them alive, wanted the information. Leah pulled Jace and Aya into the trees as shouts rose behind them. Her lungs burned, her legs throbbed, but she didn't stop, not for anything. Branches whipped her face, roots clawed at her shoes. The woods swallowed them, but the men followed, flashlights slicing the darkness like scythes. As Leah ran deeper into the forest, her breath ragged and heart savage inside her chest, one truth solidified with terrifying clarity. They would not stop coming. They would hunt them forever. Unless she found a way to use the secrets buried beneath that house, the ones connecting her to a man who ruled crime like a kingdom, to turn the hunters into the hunted. Her past wasn't dead. It was alive, armed, and closing in. And the only way to protect her children was to confront the very legacy she had never asked to inherit. The forest devoured sound, turning every snapped twig and breathless footstep into a secret. Leah pulled her children through the darkness, her fingers wrapped so tightly around their wrists she feared she might bruise them. But fear gave her strength, and desperation gave her purpose. Behind them, the distant shouts of the agents carved through the trees like knives, growing sharper with each passing second. The cold, damp soil sucked at their shoes, slowing them. Branches clawed at their skin, snagging on fabric, tearing at hair. Aya stumbled, gasping, and Leah scooped her up, slinging the girl against her hip, though the weight nearly toppled her. Jace stayed close, eyes darting wildly, his breath choked and ragged. They reached a shallow ravine, and Leah slid down on her heels, guiding the children after her. Mud splashed, staining them, but they kept moving. She didn't dare look back. She didn't dare stop. When the ravine widened and the tree line thinned, Leah finally paused, chest heaving, sweat chilling her spine as night air bit into her skin. The distant searchlights flickered through branches. The men weren't far enough. They needed cover. "There," Jace whispered, pointing to a cluster of boulders slick with moss. They crouched behind the largest, huddling together as silent as prey in tall grass. Leah pressed a trembling finger to her lips. Her heart pounded so loudly, she wondered if the agents could hear it echoing through the ground. A beam of light swept the ravine just a few yards away, illuminating the disturbed mud where they had slid. Boots followed. Voices barked commands. For a terrifying heartbeat, a flashlight paused on the rocks. Leah held her breath until her chest burned. Then the light moved on. Only when footsteps drifted past and the woods fell into uneasy silence did Leah release a shaky exhale. She hugged Jace and Aya close, feeling their hearts hammering against her. "We're not safe yet," she whispered. "Keep going." They trudged deeper into the woods, guided only by instinct and the faint glow of moonlight breaking through the leaves. Cold air settled on them like a cloak of bone. Leah wasn't sure how long they walked. Minutes felt like hours, and fear made distance infinite. When exhaustion finally forced them to stop, they reached the rusted remains of a collapsed hunting blind. Not much shelter, but it was something. Leah helped the children sit, then knelt beside them, brushing hair from their faces. "Are we going to die?" Aya asked, her small voice trembling in the dark. "No," Leah said, more fiercely than she believed. "I will never let anything happen to you. Do you understand? Never." Jace looked at his mother with a mixture of fear and trust, and something else. Curiosity. A hunger for answers that had been gnawing through him since they found the vault. "Mom," he whispered, "what did that picture mean? The one with you and John Gotti?" Leah's throat tightened around memories she'd buried so deeply she sometimes doubted they were real. But now, everything demanded truth. My mother. Monica. She wasn't just some woman who left New York because she wanted a different life. Leah said slowly. She left because she was escaping someone, something. That man in the picture, John Gotti, wasn't just a friend. He was connected to her, to me. Jace leaned closer, breath caught. Connected how? Leah swallowed. The thought tasted bitter, dangerous. I think he might have been my father. The words came out like broken glass, sharp and irreversible. Aya gasped softly, covering her mouth. Jace stared, speechless. Leah raised a hand before they could ask more. I don't know for sure. My mother refused to answer questions. Every photograph of my childhood was hidden or destroyed. Any mention of New York made her panic. I thought she hated the city. Now I know she was terrified of it. Terrified of the people who controlled it. Her voice broke. Terrified of the blood in my veins. Jace shivered. So, we're Mafia? Leah closed her eyes. We are nobody's property. We are not their continuation. We are our own family. Do you hear me? But the scars of legacy were branded into every step they had taken inside that mansion. The vault hadn't been just a secret room. It was a throne room for ghosts. And Leah suddenly realized that their arrival hadn't been an accident. Someone knew who she was, or suspected, and the house had just confirmed it. A rustle in the brush made Leah whip around. She lifted a fallen branch, ready to defend her children with splintered wood and feral instinct. But the figure that stepped from the shadows wasn't an agent. It was a man dressed in a long dark coat, his hands raised to show he wasn't armed. His face was rugged, lined with years of hardship. His eyes, brown, tired but strangely gentle, fell on Leah with recognition. "Monica?" he breathed, his voice cracking as though surprised by his own hope. Leah stared, shaken. "No, I'm her daughter." The man's breath hitched. He stepped closer, stunned. "Leah?" Her name on his lips sounded like history awakening. "Who are you?" she demanded, brandishing the branch. He lowered his hand slowly. "My name is Marco Vitali." His voice grew stronger now, the tone carrying a weight of dangerous truth. "I worked for your father." Leah stumbled back, bumping into the children. He didn't move, didn't push forward. He simply looked at her with grief that seemed to stretch decades. "I've been protecting you since the day you were born," he said quietly. Leah's skin prickled with disbelief. "Protecting me? By trapping us in that house?" Marco shook his head hard. "No. The men in suits, they're not with us. They serve an agency corrupted long ago. They want Gotti's records, the ones he kept in case the government turned on him. Those tapes, those files, they hold names. Politicians, agents, judges, criminals with badges." Leah's pulse spiked. "We watched one." Marco's expression darkened. "Then you understand. Those men would rather slaughter a family than let the truth escape." Jace stepped forward. "Why should we trust you?" Marco knelt, bringing himself eye level with the boy. "Because if I wanted you dead, I would have let them finish their job." His honesty burned through the night. A moment of fragile silence held them all. Then Leah spoke, voice low. "If you protected us, why now? Why reveal yourself?" "Because your father's gone," Marco replied, pain flickering in his eyes. "And now, every loyalty he commanded is a noose around your neck. You carry his name, whether you want it or not." "I don't," Leah said fiercely. Marco nodded. "But they won't care what you want. They care what you know. A rustle of leaves behind them made every head whip around. Marco's hand flashed to a weapon hidden inside his coat. He fired 2 silent shots into the darkness. A cry followed, someone collapsing into underbrush. He stood and grabbed Leah's arm. "We have to move. They found us." Leah clutched her children, adrenaline launching her into motion once more. The forest erupted behind them, calls, lights, the stampede of pursuit. Marco led them through twisting paths, deeper and deeper, until Leah lost all sense of direction. She trusted him only because there was no other choice. Finally, they reached a clearing where an old truck sat partially concealed beneath fallen branches. Marco threw open the passenger door. "Get in." Leah hesitated a single second, one heartbeat suspended between doubt and faith, before pushing the kids inside and sliding after them. Marco jumped behind the wheel and the engine roared to life with a grumbling fury. They tore through the woods, branches slapping against the windows as blinding lights flashed behind them. Shots cracked. A tire skidded against roots. The truck fishtailed but held. "Where are we going?" Leah shouted over the chaos. Marco's voice was a grim promise. "To someone who can explain everything." He slammed the accelerator harder as the forest thinned and a dark ribbon of road appeared before them. "Who?" Leah demanded. Marco glanced at her, eyes sharp with a vow that tasted like fate. "Your mother." Leah's world tilted. Her heart stumbled. The memory of Monica's quiet fear, of years spent running, rose like smoke. "She's alive?" Leah choked out. "How? She—" Another gunshot shattered the rear window. The past wasn't finished with them yet. Marco gritted his teeth, flooring the gas. "Hold on." As the truck surged forward into the night, Leah clutched her children close. Their lives had already changed forever. But what waited ahead, family, truth, the full weight of the Gotti legacy, promised to reshape everything they thought they knew about themselves. The future wasn't just uncertain, it was deadly. The night stretched before them like an endless highway into the unknown. The truck's headlights carved narrow slices of visibility through the darkness, while behind them, danger still lurked like a wildfire waiting for wind. Leah clutched her trembling children close as Marco drove, knuckles white on the wheel, eyes locked on the rearview mirror every few seconds. The engine groaned beneath the strain of speed, but Marco did not ease off, not when every mile put more distance between them and the men who wanted their silence. Jace pressed his face to the window, breath fogging the glass. "Are they still following us?" he asked, his voice wavering despite attempts to sound brave. "For now, no," Marco said, though the hardness in his tone betrayed his uncertainty. "We bought ourselves a little time, but they will keep hunting. It's what they do." Aya curled closer to Leah, eyes wide with exhaustion and fear. "Where is Grandma? Why didn't she ever look for us?" Leah didn't know if she had strength left to speak, but she brushed her daughter's hair gently, letting her voice fall soft and low. "Sometimes people run because staying would destroy everything they love." Marco nodded to that, jaw tightening. "Your mother disappeared when the feds turned on Gotti. She took you and vanished into a new identity. I was sent to make sure you were safe from both sides, Mafia loyalists and government traitors." He paused, voice thin as a knife's edge. "She loved you more than her own life." Leah stared out into the dark ribbon of road ahead, 1,000 memories suddenly rethreaded into new patterns she had never understood before. Every time Monica had jumped at a sudden noise, every time she had insisted on moving apartments after someone parked too long outside their building, every sleepless night her mother spent staring at the locked door. Leah had thought it was paranoia. Now she saw it for what it had been. Survival. The truck slowed as they turned down a barely visible dirt road. Overgrown bushes scraped the sides as branches whipped at the windows, the path winding deeper into rural seclusion. A faint glow appeared in the distance, a small house nestled under the sheltering arms of towering pines. Marco pulled the truck to a stop and killed the engine. They sat in silence for a moment, the night so quiet it felt held by breath itself. "She's inside," Marco said, voice gentle now. "Prepare yourself." Leah stepped out of the truck, her legs stiff and shaky. Jace helped Aya down, and together they approached the house. Marco knocked twice, sharp, quick. The door opened almost immediately. A woman stood framed in the entryway. Time had silvered her hair and softened her tense posture into something frail, but Leah would have known her anywhere. Her mother's eyes, the same shade as Leah's, deep and dark with history, sparked with shock, then flooded with emotion. "Leah," Monica whispered, her voice breaking on the name like a dam holding back tears that had waited years to fall. Leah froze. Every memory of abandonment, confusion, and longing clashed with the undeniable truth of the woman before her. She wanted to shove Monica away. She wanted to fall into her arms. She did neither. Instead, she whispered, "Mom." Monica stepped forward, and Leah stiffened, until slender arms wrapped around her and held her with desperation so visceral that Leah felt her own resistance collapse. She returned the embrace, gripping her mother as though the world around them might disappear if they let go. Jace and Aya pressed close, bewildered by the sudden tidal wave of family they never knew. Monica kissed their hair, tracing trembling fingers across their cheeks. "My grandchildren," she whispered in awe. "I never thought I'd see you. I never thought it would be safe." Leah pulled back, her voice shaken with questions. "What is happening? Why now? Why did you run? Why didn't you tell me who he was?" Monica's expression darkened, grief and fear intertwining. "Because the truth is a curse. John, your father, lived in a world where loyalty was the only law. When he realized some of his most trusted allies were being turned by the government, he created insurance, evidence, names, crimes, enough information to destroy every corrupt agent, politician, and businessman who betrayed him." Her voice quivered. "And he hid it in that house, in the vault. You found it." Leah nodded slowly. "And now they're trying to bury us with it." "Yes," Monica said, "because they know what happens if that evidence gets out. They lose their empires, they lose power, and people like us, people who know too much, are considered disposable." Marco stepped inside, securing the door behind them. "We can't stay here long. They'll find us." Monica hurried to a small table where an old laptop sat open beside a satellite phone and a tattered notebook of handwritten codes. "I never stopped preparing," she said. "I always knew one day the past would come knocking again." Leah wasn't sure if that made her mother vigilant or haunted. Marco moved toward the living room window, peering cautiously outside. "We need to make a choice. The information in that vault, if it reaches the right hands, it could expose decades of corruption. It could cleanse the system. It could avenge the innocent." "And if it reaches the wrong hands?" Leah asked, her voice low. Marco met her gaze. "It becomes a weapon, one your father wielded, and one his enemies want to reclaim." Leah's stomach twisted. Inheritance wasn't always money or houses. Sometimes it was a storm, a legacy of danger, a destiny wrapped in blood. "What do we do?" Jace asked, fear and resolve battling behind his eyes. Leah looked at her children. She had spent their whole lives shielding them from hardship. Now they faced a choice that could determine not only their future, but the future of countless others. "We finish what was started," Leah said quietly. "We take the evidence and give it to the people who can be trusted." Monica inhaled sharply. "Are you sure? The moment we do that, the hunt intensifies. They won't stop until they silence every one of us." Leah took her mother's hand. "They're coming anyway. We choose the fight." The resolve in her words seemed to ignite something in Marco. He nodded. "Then we need the vault open. All of it." Monica flipped through her notebook, stopping on a series of numbers scrawled beside a name only time could erase. This was the code he told me to memorize, in case everything fell apart. Leah stared at it, overwhelmed. It wasn't just numbers. It was trust. It was legacy. It was a father's final card left in a world full of enemies. As they gathered supplies and prepared to return to the mansion, headlights suddenly washed across the trees outside. Engines rumbled. Tires crushed fallen branches. The house shuddered under the weight of approaching doom. Marco swore under his breath. "They found us faster than I expected." Shadows prowled closer, swallowing the yard. Leah grabbed the children, pushing them behind her as Marco and Monica moved to block the door. A voice boomed from outside, amplified by a megaphone. "Leah Lawson, Monica Lawson, you are harboring classified federal property. Step out now, and you will not be harmed." Monica shook her head, eyes filled with a lifetime of terror. "They always say that, and then they bury the truth." Leah felt fear surge like fire, but she did not collapse under it. She straightened her spine, standing between her children and the door as Marco raised his gun. "They don't want justice," Leah whispered. "They want silence." And for the first time in her life, she refused to be silent. The front window shattered, glass exploding inward as men in tactical gear stormed the porch. Marco fired, and the night ignited into chaos. Leah grabbed her mother's arm and pulled her toward a back exit. Bullets tore through walls. Commands roared from outside. The world blurred in adrenaline and terror. But Leah never let go of her children, not for a single second. They fled into the night, running not away from their past, but toward the future they were determined to claim. A future where truth was not a crime. A future where their bloodline did not decide their fate. A future they would fight for together. And though shadows chased them, Leah's heart, once filled with fear, now burned with purpose. It was not the mansion that made her powerful. It was not the tapes or the vault or her connection to a name feared by thousands. It was the unbreakable bond of family. Leah Harris was no longer running from danger. She was running toward justice, toward survival, toward a life defined not by the sins of a father she never knew, but by the strength of a mother who refused to bow to fear ever again. The night roared with pursuit, but Leah kept moving. Because this was not the end. This was a beginning born from fire. A promise written in the footsteps of those who would not be erased. The truth would rise, and she would rise with it. If you want more unbelievable stories like this one, make sure to subscribe right now and turn on notifications so you never miss what happens next. Don't leave yet. Watch the next video on your screen. The story continues there. And share this video with someone who needs to see this shocking truth.